All right, let's jump right in. I want you to think of this as a detective story. But, instead of a crime scene, we're diving deep into the world of scientific research. And the big mystery here? It's all about a trusted tool, one that might have been leading scientists down the wrong path for decades.
So let me just ask you this. What if a fundamental quality check, something scientists have been using for over 30 years to make sure their work is solid, what if it was just broken? Not just failing sometimes, but failing most of the time. Think about that for a second. What would that mean for all the research? I'm talking thousands of studies that relied on it.
Okay, so to really crack this case, we got to get our heads around one key idea. And it's actually pretty simple. How do we make sure we aren't just measuring the exact same thing twice, but calling it by two different names? All right, that idea has a fancy name. It's called discriminant validity. I know, it sounds a little academic, but stick with me, because the concept is super straightforward. It's just a check to make sure that two things you're trying to measure, let's say job satisfaction and company loyalty, are actually different things. You have to be sure you're not just slapping two different labels on the very same feeling.
And honestly, the best way to think about it is like this. Imagine you're giving someone a color blindness test. You absolutely have to be sure your test can reliably tell the difference between red and green, right? Because if it can't, then everything you conclude about red and green is basically useless. Well, that's exactly what discriminant validity is supposed to do, but for big, abstract ideas in research.
So for decades, I'm talking over 30 years, researchers pretty much had two standard go-to tools for this specific check. These were the old guards, the trusted methods that everyone, and I mean everyone, used to validate their work. The first one was called the Fornell-Larcker Criterion. Basically, it just checked if a concept was, more like itself than like other concepts. The other was something called cross-loadings, which was all about making sure the questions in a survey were actually measuring what they were supposed to measure. And yeah, for a long, long time, these two were the undisputed champions. Okay, and this is where our whole detective story just takes a massive turn. Because after all those years of trust, this bedrock of research, some people started to get this nagging feeling, a suspicion that these trusted old tools might actually be broken.
Think about it like this. What if these tests were like a smoke detector that never, ever goes off when there's a fire? It just sits there on the ceiling, giving you this false sense of security. But when you desperately need it to do its job, nothing. Just silence. That was the exact fear brewing in the research community.
So what did they do? They set up the ultimate test. They ran this big computer simulation where they deliberately created a fire. They made two concepts that were, for all intents and purposes, identical. A clear, undeniable problem that any good test should spot immediately. The big question was, would those old smoke detectors finally make a sound? And the results, wow. The results for the most popular method, that Fornell-Larcker Criterion, they were just staggering. In a scenario where it should have screamed problem 100% of the time, it actually gave a passing grade more than 85% of the time. Its actual success rate at finding the fire was a measly 14.59%. Just unbelievable.
Let me put that a different way for you. For every single time this test actually did its job and caught the problem, it completely missed it almost 6 other times. We're talking about an 85% failure rate for what was supposed to be a gold standard tool.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, oh, it does. Remember that second tool, the cross-loadings one? Its success rate? 0. A big, fat 0%. It never once detected the problem. It wasn't just a bad smoke detector. It was a smoke detector with no batteries, no wires, completely and utterly useless.
So, okay, you might be thinking, it's a computer simulation, who cares? But the thing is, the real-world consequences of this are, well, they're huge.
The researchers who discovered this really said it best. If your tools can't tell two ideas apart, then you can't be certain that your results are even real. You might think you've discovered that A causes B, but what if A and B were just the same thing all along? It calls into question the conclusions of countless studies. But don't worry, this story has a hero. After finding this massive flaw, the researchers didn't just walk away. Nope. They came up with a solution, a new test, a much, much better one. And this new solution is called the Heterotrait-Monotrait ratio of correlations. Okay, that's a mouthful, I know, so everyone just calls it HTMT. It's designed to do the exact same job as the old, broken tools, but with one tiny difference. It actually works. And the beauty of HTMT is that the logic behind it is just
Common sense. It's super intuitive. All it's really doing is saying, hey, the different parts of one idea should stick together more strongly than they stick to some other completely different idea. It's just comparing the within-group similarity to the across-group similarity. So simple, but so powerful.
So the real question, how did our new hero, HTMT, do on that same fire drill simulation? Well, take a look. While the old tools were just getting absolutely demolished, HTMT came in and correctly spotted the flaw around 97% of the time. It's like we've finally replaced that useless plastic disc on the ceiling with a state-of-the-art fire alarm. The difference is night and day. And this wasn't just some interesting finding for a scientific paper. No way. The discovery of HTMT led to a complete rethinking of the rules for researchers. It literally set a brand new gold standard for the field. And the new rules of thumb are refreshingly simple. Basically, if you run this HTMT test and get a value over 0.90, that's a big red flag. It's telling you your two concepts might just be the same thing. And if you're dealing with ideas that are supposed to be pretty similar to begin with, you need to be even more careful. The cutoff there is 0.85. Finally, a benchmark that people can actually rely on. And like the authors themselves said, this is not a minor adjustment. This is a fundamental change, a new standard that affects pretty much everyone, from the researchers in the lab to the people in the real world who depend on that research being accurate. So our detective story has its solution, which is great, but it also leaves us with this really big, kind of unsettling question. If a tool this fundamental could be broken for over 30 years without anyone really noticing, it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What else are we taking for granted? What other trusted ideas in science might be overdue for a second look?